How did a talking mongoose become part of British folklore? And was he real after all? Happy Halloween, history heroes! I'm Tempest, and welcome to Time with Tempest, where today we're going to be talking about Gef the Talking Mongoose. Was he a potential paranormal pet, a history hoax, or a horrifying hallucination? If you want to learn more hidden history, make sure to subscribe, bang that bell, distribute your delight, and leave your calling card in the comments below. Now, let's begin our story. It's September 1931 in a small hamlet called Dolby on the Isle of Man off the coast of England. James Irving, his wife Margaret, and their 13-year-old daughter Vori live in an isolated farmhouse between the ocean and a river. They had moved from Liverpool, a large, bustling industrial city, about 15 years prior, with the oldest sister, Elsie, who by 1931 was already living in England. It must have been a shock. 𝐓𝐤𝐻𝐬𝐻, as the farmhouse was called, was almost 2 miles away from the local village. But to Vori, it was all she'd ever known. So when she and her family saw an odd creature in the yard, accompanied by rustling sounds in the walls, it must have been one of the most exciting moments of Vori's life. The stone walls of her home had several inches of space between the wood paneling and the stone, so it wouldn't be that unusual to have an animal trapped in there. And perhaps the odd creature that they saw was simply a polecat that was indigenous to the Isle of Man. But this creature was yellow and had a bushy tail. Soon after, the noises in the wall turned into other animal noises and then began to speak. Out of the walls came a clear, albeit screeching voice, and it said that its name was Gef, spelled G-E-F. He said that he was an extra clever mongoose, as well as stating that he was an earthbound spirit and a ghost in the form of a mongoose. At first, the Irvings were upset and frightened of Gef and attempted to poison him and shoot him. This caused him to act out, making noises all throughout the house, keeping the family awake at night, constantly speaking, growling, eating their butter, and threatening them as they had threatened him. But in early 1932, they decided to accept Gef as part of their household, even leaving out cream, biscuits, and chocolate on top of the cupboard to tempt him. He graciously accepted, and his alarming behavior was replaced with a more mischievous, yet helpful one. While he was most frequently found hiding behind the walls, he did make himself known to the Irvings and did occasionally allow them to see him. Vori was his favorite family member, and he used to follow her all around the farm and act like a sort of companion to her. They played games together, and Vori was able to get Gef to do things that he would not ordinarily do when the other Irvings were around. While he appeared attached to her, he did explore the island by himself, and was even spotted by a few neighbors. He was able to repeat to Vori private conversations that had taken place miles away from their farmhouse. He was helpful in other ways as well. If the fire was forgotten about at night, he would douse it. He also informed the family of visitors and would wake them up if they overslept. He was particularly skilled at hunting rabbits and would often deposit them at a spot on the farm for James to retrieve and sell for a profit. Several friends started to experience Gef's antics for themselves, one of whom was Arthur Morrison, the son of a family friend who got turned from a skeptic into a believer. While sitting with a family, Gef spoke to him and told him that because he did not believe in him, he would keep him up all night. True to his word, Arthur was trying to sleep that night when he was awakened by strange noises under his bed. When he looked under his bed, he saw a pair of glowing eyes, and whatever it was hissed at him. The creature then asked if he believed yet, and proceeded to spend the entire night banging on the walls and making noises so that Arthur could not sleep. The next morning, Arthur proclaimed that Gef was real and proceeded to apologize to him for ever doubting his existence. Other guests observed objects moving on their own as well as things being thrown at them through the cracks in the wall. Soon, the tale of the Irving's mysterious mongoose spread throughout the island and then Britain. Journalists began to appear, desperate for a photo of Gef and to hear his voice. But Gef and the Irvings were not fond of them. They turned down interview requests, even if money was involved, though the Irvings were quite poor. It was simply because the Irvings, and Gef, didn't like people coming into the home that they didn't know. Eventually, they allowed some people to the home to report on Gef, even allowing Harry Price, a paranormal investigator, to explore the home and what was now dubbed the Dolby Spook. When Price explored the house, he found that the gap in the wall created a sort of telephone effect, where if someone was speaking on one end of the house near the gap, someone on the other end could hear it. Despite everything that Price had done, he still was not able to debunk Gef, even though he felt that it was a hoax. Gef continued to be active until 1939, when 𝐓𝐢𝐻𝐬 moved out of the farmhouse. After that, almost all of his antics disappeared. James stopped allowing visitors to the house. And it wasn't until the eldest daughter, Elsie, moved into the farmhouse to take care of the dying James that Gef made another appearance in 1945. And when James died, Elsie and Margaret both witnessed a brush moving back and forth in the fireplace by itself. When he was laid to rest in his coffin, rain was heard on the roof, despite it being a clear sunny day. Sadly, the family had to sell the home after James's death, and didn't receive much money for it at all due to its reputation. A local farmer eventually bought it. He moved in, and promptly moved out, and sold the house a few months later. After that, it was sold to an ex-army lieutenant from England who reported that he saw a strange yellow weasel around his property. He even claimed that it disappeared after a few seconds of seeing it. Determined to find out what the creature was, he set a snare trap, and did eventually catch something, though photographs reveal that it was actually a polecat. Later records regarding the farmhouse remain sketchy, and it was most likely that it fell into disrepair due to lack of ownership and its reputation. Today, only a few stones remain of the farmhouse, and Gef has not been seen in decades. But the question still remains, what was Gef? Here are just a few of my theories. Theory number 1. The animal that the Irving saw was just a polecat, or a polecat-ferret hybrid. Polecats have a yellow undercoat, and ferrets can sometimes have a yellow tint to them, so it's possible that when mated, they created a creature that looked like Gef. The explanation for the noises that they heard and the objects moving by themselves can be explained by a folie de trois. Folie à trois refers to madness of 3 people, and is a shared psychotic disorder. 3 people, usually family, share the same delusions and hallucinations. Though it is rare, it does happen, and its main contributing factors are stress and social isolation, which, as we know, the Irvings had in abundance. However, that doesn't explain the experience other people had, unless they shared in the same delusion. Theory number 2. There actually wasn't a Gef, and the family created the entire thing. However, various reporters said that they saw the Irving family while the noises were occurring, and they were neither speaking nor moving. Additionally, the Irvings were not seeking attention or money, so it's unclear why they would create a hoax. Theory number 3. Gef was a paranormal entity and had latched himself onto 𝐓𝐢𝐻𝐬. Many paranormal investigators say that young girls can inadvertently create spiritual energy, which itself manifests into a poltergeist or the appearance of a spirit. Perhaps the energy was being manifested into a friendly and familiar sight to 𝐓𝐲𝐬, like a polecat, and it's possible she unconsciously caused its actions. Or Gef could be an actual spirit, and he just chose to manifest in a friendly, familiar sight to 𝐓𝐲𝐬 as to not scare her. Either way, Gef was not of this world. Now, there is actually folklore from Britain that could explain this as well. In Britain, it is known that cunning folk, aka folk healers, have a familiar with them, which is an animal spirit that helps them with their work or protects those who don't understand their power yet. Did 𝐓𝐲𝐬𝐬 possess an unknown power? Or was it Margaret, who is described as alarming and peculiar with piercing eyes? Those who met her stated, I have no doubt she could make her fortune as a palmist or soothsayer. Immediately, I had the feeling she's a witch. Or perhaps Gef was just a household spirit, which is another part of British folklore. In Britain, household spirits are generally mischievous yet helpful and can be appeased by milk, cream, or other snacks laid out, which are greatly appreciated. But if they feel they're not appreciated, regardless of the snacks, they'll disappear for years, decades, or forever. However, with this theory, as with all the other theories, there's no solid evidence. So, what do you think, my history heroes? Was our extra clever mongoose simply a spirit? Or was he something more sinister, like a shared psychotic disorder? Or perhaps still, the 𝐓𝐢𝐻𝐸s were pulling off a decades-long hoax? Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear your theories. I may even tell you mine, and the answer may surprise you. And if you liked what you saw, make sure to subscribe, bang that bell, distribute your delight, and leave your calling card in the comments below because the YouTube algorithm gods demand it. Until next time, stay curious, history heroes.